Hello YouTube, this is Cross. I'm here with the Reaper. We've been asked to do a few videos on teams, be they tactical teams or simply operational teams working within an SHTF environment. It's easiest to start with the picture, a picture painted rather, of you and your group, your family, your community, whoever it may be, even yourself. And it's time to leave the homestead. You've prepared, you've planned, and you've been in a position to provide for yourself for the entire time that you've been put away, so to say. But now the supplies are run low, or perhaps it's just time to get some information on the outside world, keep up with what's going on outside. How do you do that? Well, if you have a group, if you have a community, you don't want to take everyone out to go experiment, so to say. You want to have, you want to break that down into teams, and scouts are going to be very important. So that's what we're going to focus on, really, in this video, is the scouting element of the larger group. In my preference, I've always suggested a 2 to 4 man team, but let's just assume that you're working with 2 men here, and this is solely for the purpose of gathering a bit of information. Once you leave your homestead, once you leave your OB, if you will, you want to keep a low profile. You want to stay as close to the setting that you're in, be it rural or urban. If you're in an urban environment, it's much easier to keep aware of broken windows on the sides of homes, car windows even, boarded up windows or boarded up homes. These are all telltale signs of locations that have either been established or protected in some manner, assuming that your area entirely isn't already like that in a derelict neighborhood. You want to carry light. You don't want to overburden yourself, because movement is going to be your priority. Being able to move quietly, move quickly, moving smoothly throughout this terrain is going to be of the utmost importance. Armament, my suggestion would be to always have some sort of sidearm. You definitely want to have a survival knife, or even a knife fit for combat. Rifles could be useful, but I would suggest having a scoped rifle for the purposes of not only target acquisition, but also they're very useful for seeing at distances, and while having an offensive capability at the same time. But imagine, as you move through this terrain, that you want to be aware of everything around you. If you're passing through a neighborhood in which a detour had initially been set up, the detouring traffic from major roads, from one major road to another, through high traffic areas, it would have behooved you to have taken notice to the way this detour had been set up initially, because in SHTF, it's very possible that this detour has been modified, and not in a good way. Better traps have been laid by the use of detour signs. If that traffic can be directed to a choke point or even a dead end, you want to be aware of that when you're preparing this information for the rest of your group. You don't want to walk them right into a trap. If you're moving along major roads or highways, be aware of barricades or obstacles that have been set up. A collection of cars lined up along the road could be the perimeter of someone else's zone, someone else's area. You want to know this before you go traipsing into it. Folks are going to be on high alert during these times. They're not going to want to ask questions, and many would be willing to shoot first and rifle through your remains to take whatever they want or need after the case. You may not have the option. So staying away from these areas, or at least being aware of them, is something you want to keep in mind. Knowing your neighborhoods, knowing gang territories, if gangs operate in your area, is a good thing to know as well. This is information that you can start compiling today, because when it happens, you may be at work, you may be at home, but hopefully you'll be in a position to be prepared. Hopefully you'll be in a position to use this information that you've already collected to be ahead of the game. If a neighborhood or an area happens to be particularly against the authorities, and you see a collection of police vehicles, if it indeed is the police or the military, if you see these vehicles, that's a good sign that these people in this area are not for the authorities. They've probably taken them and kept them when the authorities were dispatched on alert or other calls, and they did away with them. You want to stay away from that area because they probably have even less respect or care or consideration for you if they can do this to the authorities. Moving into police barricades that you might find along the roads. The police and the military alike, they have protocol. They have methods that they have to follow when engaging contact. They just don't start shooting at you, for the most part. If you can learn these procedures, this gives you a step up on being aware of the elements that may try to disguise themselves as police. Anyone can throw on a uniform and pretend to be an authority figure. And if you're not greeted in the particular way that the authorities should greet you, it's a good sign that they might not be who they say they are. Is there anything you can add?
Mostly when you're out there doing some of these reconnaissance missions, i.e. whether you're looking for food, resources, ideally I would recommend that, like Cross had said, pack light. 1 to 2 days of food, maybe 3 MREs max. Bring a good set of binoculars or type of optics, whether it is a scope. Maybe it's mounted, maybe it's not. You want to always maintain your situational awareness and understand what is around you, and always remember, 2 is 1, 1 is none. If you send a man out there to go find some resources and he's by himself, nobody's going to hear him. So remember, 2 is 1, travel in teams everywhere you go. If you are a female group out there, travel in a group of at least minimum 3. Mandatory. If you got males in your group but you're mostly females, 2 females to 1 male. Stay with a group. When you're out there and you're trying to establish routes, make sure that you know what routes your group can actually take. You know the people that you have in your group. If it's a wall that you have to climb, can everybody in your group climb that wall?
That's a good point.
You know, is it if it's a downhill slope, can everybody go down that slope? You know your groups more than we do. We know the capabilities of the people and the men in our group and the women in our group. We know what they can and cannot do. So assess that with your scouting. Understand that there might be certain routes that you'll have to take only because of the people that are in your group. Mind what you are carrying. Because if you've got certain items that are extremely bulky that are in your group that have to be 2-man carried, maybe it's a person that had fallen over or gotten injured along the way, and you have them on a skid, you're not going to try to walk through no thorn bushes with it. You know, be mindful of that.
Yeah, you can be affected by your terrain.
And as you're out there as well scouting, if you are confronted and seen, try to do your best to stay calm. And if you can, talk your way out of the situation and get back to your group. If things were to arise and escalate, I just wish you luck.
That's a good point that the Reaper brings up. When you do have to make contact, or if you're forced into contact with some of these groups out here, be mindful of the things that you're carrying. Be mindful of your appearance as well. Blending into your environment is paramount. It is one of your best advantages. If you many groups will will speak from a tactical perspective, but being tactical doesn't necessarily mean dressing militarily or dressing as law enforcement tend to do. It doesn't necessarily mean having a plate carrier. It doesn't necessarily mean having drop-leg holsters or weapon slings. So it's very effective to carry a weapon that way. Tactically can mean doing what is best for the short-term exposure to your environment, the short-term mission, if you will, and blending in. As I said, will be a very, very important factor. If the authorities see a group of extremely well-armed men, armored, that says something to them. That puts them on alert. That puts them in a position to be defensive immediately. They may even go on the offensive. Anyone could, for that matter. So keeping your attire minimal is suggested. If you're moving in an urban environment, it doesn't have to be combat boots or commonly worn jungle boots. It could be tennis shoes. You move very quickly in them, very light. You gotta remember that as you're moving through an urban setting, you might have to hop fences. You might have to go through homes. You might be forced to. Hopefully, they'll be abandoned homes. Hopefully, they won't be occupied or anyone in there. That's a whole other scenario altogether. But be mindful of the terrain. Always. Your movement will be affected by this. The time spent on the road will be affected by this. Your ability to return home after you've gained information, after you've marked, you've made note of important markers as you moved along. All of this is very, very important and can be affected by your terrain. So keep these things in mind. You want to make sure that you're able to plan a very safe route or the safest route possible for your people when it is time to move. There's going to be a few more videos made from us about these teams, if you will, and we speak tactfully. Our language is tactical because that's what works for us. Ultimately, my opinion and my suggestion to anyone listening is that you use whatever methods work well for you. You may have military members in your group who are used to operating in a certain fashion, but civilians in that group may not be used to the jargon. They may not be used to the structure. They may not be used to the speed. So you're going to have to keep that in mind when you think about these functions and when you try to put these plays into motion, because it's going to affect everyone, and everyone needs to be on the same page. Everyone needs to be able to move at the same speed. So hopefully this has been helpful, and hopefully you'll continue to check our channels out, both mine, Cross, and the Reapers. So with that, keep your heads up and always be prepared.